She approached Kurt Cobain at the airport with tears in her eyes and a trembling voice that barely whispered above the crowd noise. What she said next stopped him cold, and the 15-minute conversation that followed would save her life and change her father forever. It was March 1994 at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Kurt was trying to get through the terminal unnoticed, wearing his usual oversized sunglasses and a ratty cardigan that had seen better days. He'd just finished a grueling promotional tour and wanted nothing more than to get home to Frances Bean and disappear for a few days. The airport was crowded with the usual chaos of travelers rushing to gates, dragging luggage, shouting into payphones. Kurt kept his head down, walking fast, hoping nobody would recognize him. He'd gotten good at moving through public spaces invisible, just another tired person trying to get somewhere. That's when he heard the voice. "Excuse me. Are you Kurt Cobain?" The voice belonged to a girl who looked about 16 years old. She had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, and her hands were shaking as she clutched a worn Nevermind CD case against her chest like a shield. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, though Kurt wouldn't learn that until later. Sarah had been standing at this gate for 3 hours, not waiting for a flight, but waiting for Kurt. She'd seen on MTV that Nirvana was coming back to Seattle today, had called the airport pretending to be a journalist to find out which airline, which flight, which gate. Her parents thought she was at school. Kurt's first instinct was to keep walking. He'd learned the hard way that stopping for one fan in a crowded place meant getting mobbed by 20 more within minutes. But something about this girl's eyes stopped him. They weren't the usual excited fan eyes. They were desperate. "Yeah," Kurt said quietly, glancing around to see if anyone else had noticed. "Hey." The girl's breath caught. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Tears started running down her face, and she looked embarrassed, angry at herself for crying. "You okay?" Kurt asked, instinctively stepping a little closer, blocking her from the view of passing travelers. Sarah shook her head. Then she said the words that would change everything. "I'm alive because of your music." Kurt had heard variations of this before. Fans told him all the time that his songs meant something to them, or that Nirvana had gotten them through hard times. He always appreciated it, always felt the weight of it, but he'd never quite known how to respond. But the way this girl said it was different. She didn't say his music made her happy or helped her cope. She said she was alive because of it, present tense, like it was an ongoing negotiation. "What do you mean?" Kurt asked. Sarah looked around the busy terminal, suddenly aware that they were standing in the middle of everything. People were starting to glance over, recognizing Kurt, whispering to their companions. "Can we?" she started, her voice breaking. "Can we talk somewhere else? Just for a minute." Every professional instinct Kurt had told him this was a bad idea. He didn't know this girl. He had a flight to catch. There were already people pulling out cameras. But something in her eyes, some recognition of pain that mirrored his own, made him nod. "Yeah," he said. "Come on." Kurt led Sarah to a quiet corner near a closed gate, away from the main flow of traffic. He set down his bag and leaned against the wall, waiting. Sarah clutched the CD case tighter, started talking in a rush, like if she didn't get it all out fast, she might lose her nerve. "I've been planning to kill myself for 6 months, she said, not like thinking about it, planning it. I had pills saved up. I wrote letters to my parents. I picked a date. Next week, spring break, when they'd be at work and I'd be home alone." Kurt felt his stomach drop. He'd dealt with his own suicidal thoughts more times than he could count, but hearing it from someone else, especially someone this young, hit different. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked gently. "Because 3 days ago I was sitting in my room with the pills in my hand," Sarah said, "and I put on Nevermind. Not to feel better, just because I wanted to hear it one more time. And when All Apologies came on, she paused, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. You sang that line. Everyone is gay. Everyone is the same. I'm so ugly, but that's okay, 'cause so are you." Kurt knew the lyrics. He'd written them in a hotel room in Brazil, feeling like the loneliest person on earth despite being surrounded by thousands of fans. "I realized something," Sarah continued. You feel like this too. Like you're fundamentally broken. Like you don't fit. And you're Kurt Cobain. You're famous. You have everything. And you still feel like I feel. Kurt didn't say anything. Just listened. If you can feel like this and still make music that matters, Sarah said, her voice steadier now. If you can feel like this and still have a daughter and still show up, then maybe I can too. Maybe being broken isn't the end. Maybe it's just part of being alive. The airport sounds faded into background noise. Kurt stood there looking at this 16-year-old girl who'd just articulated something he'd been struggling to understand about his own life. Can I ask you something? Kurt said finally. Sarah nodded. Do your parents know about any of this? Sarah shook her head. They don't get it. They think I'm just being dramatic. Teenage angst, you know. They don't understand that it's real, that I wake up every day feeling like I'm suffocating. Kurt knew that feeling intimately, the way depression didn't announce itself with violins. It just sat on your chest every morning making breathing feel like work. What changed? Kurt asked. 3 days ago you had pills in your hand. Today you're here at the airport. What happened between those two things? I wanted to see you, Sarah said simply. I wanted to tell you that your music saved my life. Because if I was going to die, I wanted you to know that you mattered, that what you do matters, even if you don't feel like it does. Kurt felt his throat tighten. Here was this kid, this broken, hurting kid, and she'd come to the airport to tell him he mattered. While he spent most days feeling like a fraud, like everything he did was meaningless noise. Listen, Kurt said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. I need you to know something. I'm not okay either. Most days I'm really not okay. So if you're looking at me like I have answers, I don't. I know, Sarah said. That's why it helps. They stood there for a moment in silence. Then Kurt did something he almost never did. He took off his sunglasses so she could see his eyes. Here's what I know, he said. Those pills, that plan, that date next week, that's not the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that's not it. You hear me? Sarah nodded, crying again. You need to tell your parents, Kurt continued. Today. And if they don't listen, you need to tell a teacher, a counselor, somebody. Because this feeling you have, it's real, it's valid. But it doesn't have to be permanent. What if it never goes away? Sarah asked. What if I feel like this forever? Then you learn to live with it anyway, Kurt said. You find the things that make the weight lighter. Music, art, people who get it. You build a life around the broken parts instead of waiting for them to fix themselves. A security guard was approaching, having noticed the small crowd that was forming at a distance, people with cameras. Kurt had maybe another minute before this became a scene. I'm going to give you something, Kurt said suddenly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled napkin and a pen. Wrote down a number. This is the suicide prevention hotline, he said. And this, he wrote another number, is my management office. You call them and tell them Sarah talked to Kurt at the airport. They'll know what that means. If you need help, if your parents don't listen, you call that number and they'll help you find resources. Okay. Sarah took the napkin like it was made of gold. And this, Kurt said. Wow, taking the Nevermind CD from her hands. He pulled a Sharpie from his bag and opened the case. Instead of just signing it, he wrote a full message inside. Sarah, being broken isn't the same as being finished. Keep going. The world needs broken people who keep going. They're the only ones who tell the truth. Kurt, he handed it back to her. Promise me something, he said. What? Sarah asked. Promise me you'll make it to next month. Just next month. Don't think about next year or the rest of your life. Just promise me, April. Can you do that? Sarah looked at the CD case, at the message, at Kurt's face, nodded slowly. I promise, April. Good, Kurt said. Then when April comes, promise me May, 1 month at a time. That's all any of us can do. The security guard was closer now. People were definitely recognizing Kurt, starting to approach. But Kurt didn't move yet. One more thing, he said. That feeling you have that you're alone in this, you're not. There are so many of us out here feeling exactly what you feel. We're just all hiding it, pretending we're fine. but we're not fine. And that's okay. That's human. Sarah wiped her face. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Just thank you. Don't thank me, Kurt said. Just live. That's all the thanks I need. You living is enough. The security guard arrived then, politely but firmly suggesting that Kurt needed to move along before the crowd got out of hand. Kurt grabbed his bag, gave Sarah one last look. April, he said. April, she repeated. Kurt disappeared into the crowd, security escort keeping fans at a distance. Sarah stood there holding her CD case, watching him go, and feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. The sense that maybe next week didn't have to be the end. Sarah did call the number Kurt gave her, 3 days later when the darkness came back. The office connected her with a therapist who specialized in teen depression. Sarah started treatment, started the long work of learning to live with her brain. But something else happened too. 2 weeks after the airport, Sarah's father found her suicide note while cleaning the garage, the one she'd written but never used. He read it, sitting on a paint can, and wept. That night, he sat with Sarah, asked her to explain every line, listened for 3 hours as she told him about the pain she'd been carrying alone. And he apologized for not seeing it, for dismissing it. Mom, for thinking love was enough without understanding. He wrote a letter to Kurt through the management office, explained who he was, what the airport conversation had prevented, thanked him for seeing his daughter when he had failed to. Kurt kept that letter in his journal. His manager later told Sarah's father that Kurt would read it on bad days, a reminder that being honest about pain could save someone. 6 months later, Sarah was better, not cured, but better. She started writing her own music, terrible, honest, broken songs about wanting to die and choosing to live anyway. April became May. May became June. Months became years. Sarah's father started volunteering at youth crisis centers, started being the kind of father who asked hard questions and listened to uncomfortable answers. The airport conversation lasted 15 minutes, but it rippled outward in ways neither Kurt nor Sarah could have predicted. Years later, after Kurt was gone, Sarah told her story. Not for fame, but because people needed to know the angry, broken rock star was also the person who stopped in an airport to save a stranger's life with honesty and time. Kurt didn't give her answers, just permission to be broken and keep going. Sometimes that's all anyone needs. We never know who's watching, who needs to hear they're not alone. Kurt spent his career feeling like a fraud, but to Sarah in that airport, he was the reason to live one more month. The things we think are weaknesses are often exactly what someone else needs to see to survive their own. Kurt wasn't a therapist, just a person who knew what it felt like to want the pain to stop and chose to be honest about it. That honesty saved a life. Sometimes all we can do is stop, put down our bags, tell someone their pain is real and surviving is enough. Kurt gave Sarah 15 minutes in a crowded airport. Sarah gave Kurt proof that his brokenness had purpose. Her father learned that love without understanding isn't enough. 3 people, 1 conversation, 15 minutes. That's all it took to change the trajectory of a life. The question we should all ask ourselves is simple. If someone approached us tomorrow with tears in their eyes and pain in their voice, would we have 15 minutes? Would we stop? Would we listen? Kurt did. And somewhere out there, Sarah is still alive because of it, still making music, still fighting her brain, is still choosing April, then May, then June, 1 month at a time, just like he told her. That's all any of us can do.